Marcus, Cal, pleasure to have you guys here. Pleasure, Cal.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Sean. Thank you for having me, Marcus.
Yes.
Yeah, good to be here. Good to have you here, Carl. Hey, Sean, how's your trade going, by the way?
How's you guys trades going? Trades are going good. It's the Bitcoin only, Bitcoin always. Just buy, never sell. So that's the trade. For everyone listening in, we have a very special guest today, Cal Casa. A little bit about him. He's doing everything that you could ever possibly think of. He's doing Bitcoin education with Bitcoin Burr in Ethiopia. He's working at Hoseki app, which is pretty cool. A Bitcoin only program, which shows proof of ownership of your Bitcoin. He's written some articles, spoken around the world, helped onboard thousands of Bitcoiners. So he may think that he's not doing much, but he's doing a lot. So we're excited.
Doing Satoshi's work.
Yes, exactly. And then also we're going to be talking a lot about Ethiopia today. So I did a little bit of research for anyone who's wondering about Ethiopia. It's the second biggest country in Africa, the whole continent of Africa. It's about 1/10 of the population of Africa itself. It's located in East Africa. It uses the Ethiopian birr for money. It's known for its rich history. It has plenty of gold medalists, a lot of marathoners. And it has also a great mix of Islam and Christianity, which is pretty cool. And then the average age of Ethiopians is 19 and a half years old. And there's about 115 million Ethiopians. So we're going to see a lot of Ethiopians for a long time. I think everything I've been looking at, this country is amazing. It's a beautiful country. So we're excited to get to know Cal better, to get to know about Ethiopia, and also to get to understand how Bitcoin can play a role in Ethiopia's future. So I just wanted to get started with you, right, Cal? I've heard you say that you are an Ethiopian diaspora, and I kind of want to just understand a little bit more about what is an Ethiopian diaspora and how has that helped shape who you are?
Yeah, I mean, it's Ethiopian diasporas. They are essentially Ethiopian born, but living in the United States or anywhere else in the world, right, outside of Ethiopia. And that community has grown over the years. It started probably around the 60s when our emperor was sending the students out on, study abroad, right? And saying, hey, look, do 4 years at Harvard, do 4 years at Oxford, right? And sending the best students out. And then they came back. And in the 70s, these same students kind of enacted a revolution, and the country became a communist country. And then still that government sent out, students to Cuba, right? And Russia and to East Germany. And so then that bred even more diasporas around the world. And then in the 90s, that's when my family emigrated to the United States. It was under a diversity visa program by the Bill Clinton administration in the early 90s. And so that brought in another influx of immigrants like my father and of course, our whole family. And so, now I don't know numbers, but it's a great deal of diasporas around the world. And they're extremely important in not only the ideas that they bring back to Ethiopia, but in the remittance, right? Because a lot of the exports of Ethiopia rely on remittance from friends and family and things like this. So that's kind of the history of the diasporas in from Ethiopia.
Okay.
And were you born there yourself, or are you like a second generation or third generation?
So I was
diaspora.
I was born there myself. And then I migrated to California when I was 3 years old. And then I, now I go back and forth, and I'm kind of, quite confused as to if I'm American or Ethiopian, but I think it doesn't really matter anymore, right? I mean, I have an American passport, so I have access to, Cash App, right? I mean, that's what it's good for at this point. And so yeah, I mean, I'm firmly in the middle.
Yeah, little do our listeners know that the best benefit of having an American passport is the access to Cash App. That's the that's the number one thing. Not even sponsored by them, so you know.
Yeah, or any other app, right?
Yes.
Any other, I mean, it's funny. I was watching this Instagram thing on some tech developers in Ethiopia, and they were like on a stage talking about how Ethiopians don't own the file for the .et, right? So like all of the kind of domain names, we are kind of renting them. We don't really own them, right? Either as state agencies or as individuals, and all of those payments are done in the United States dollar, right? So, you know, it's funny because I probably own like 3 or 4 domain names, Bitcoin, Burr, and all of that, and I can do that because I have dollars, right? And someone in Ethiopia would have to go through a broker like me, right? Or maybe, you know, even the government has to go through, you know, some sort of broker, right? So it's, these closed capital markets are really silly.
Yeah, you know, kind of going on that same line, you know, you think about, right, you're like, look, I'm Ethiopian American. It seems more like anything, you're just a free man, right? You're able to travel wherever you want to, and you have that sovereign individual mindset. And I think that's a really big thing for a lot of Bitcoiners, but not just Bitcoiners, just people in general. We're trying to figure out, you know, how can we be free, and what can provide freedom to us, and what is even freedom for us. When it comes to, you know, Ethiopia and how that looks, you know, has there been big talks or topics with you and other Ethiopians on what does freedom look like, or has freedom even been a big topic of conversation, even for the Ethiopian government, right? How can Ethiopia as a country be more free and be a world leader, or be a leader in Africa?
So yeah, I mean, you know, these are I'm sure everyone is having this conversation in their own ways, right?
Yeah.
And I, like, the only way I know how to have that conversation is through my Bitcoin education, right?
Yeah.
And that's a little strategic too, because let's just say I start talking about a minister, or, you know, some mayor or whatever. It becomes a smaller conversation, right? And it, you know, like, I know terrible individuals like that, you know, like if you want to like point to names, like I can, you know, do that, right? But it's not those individuals that are, you know, creating less freedoms. I think it's broken institutions. I think it's broken laws, and miseducation, right? Or maybe no education at all. So I think if Ethiopians can continue to just, you know, and Ethiopians are very sovereign. Like, I mean, we don't rely on a lot of people for much, you know. I mean, we do in terms of like the aid, but that's just kind of pushed down our throats. And we also understand the harm it creates. And the Prime Minister was speaking today about, you know, the UN, and he used Muartenya, that's a word in Amharic to say someone that wishes ill on you, you know, like, why would you announce famines before they happen? Why would you create these news cycles of like, you know, fear, right? Fear mongering, and creating different angles to a story that, you know, doesn't exist. Like, we all understand what insurance is for, right? And how farm yields work. But then to try to manipulate those conversations, like, you know, there are some things that, you know, Bitcoin is really good for, and then there's some freedoms that you have to take through other means. Yeah,
I think like, you know, one of the things that I studied when there's actually a thing that I remember from college, was a saying. You know, I was studying lean systems, and continuous improvement was one of the things that I studied, and it was, you know, most of the time that we recognize, you know, a lot of times when there's something that's breaking down, we want to blame the people. But most of the times the people are trying to do their best, and it's not the people, but it's the systems that are in place that are broken. And so if we could figure out a way to improve the systems, then the people would have better outcomes. And I think that's definitely one thing that we see, you know, in many developing countries like Ethiopia, but even in the United States, right? That's, you know, we're so divided right now in the United States with all these politicians, and sometimes you just think maybe if we had a better system in place that could help people feel a lot more secure and a lot more free, even in their own countries.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
effort.
like maybe a little back question for me, because I haven't done as much research as Sean has, and he mentioned the birr. I'm guessing that's the national currency and not the money printer go birr over there. But what Ethiopia is that like? How should I imagine the place? Is it much a cash society where people pay with dollars or with the local birr? And has the local birr experienced a lot of hyperinflation, or is it like a modern economy? I mean, you know, you've got a lot of stages of developing countries, right? So like, you'd explain it to like a European and American, like what are the biggest differences we should imagine?
Yeah, sure. So it is, you know, inflationary, right? They print more, they are given more, right? Because aid also adds to this kind of effect. And also it's very hard to unravel the data, because you have what the Central Statistical Agency is telling you that's on the ground. They're funded by the World Bank. They're also on the ground, but you know, obviously their headquarters is in DC. And then you have, you know, the local currency itself, you know, where is it printed? You know, I mean, I'm trying to learn more about the histories of security printing itself, to where kind of like, because all of the security printing for the Ethiopian birr, BIRR, the Ethiopian birr gets printed in, I believe, London, like to this day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
Wow.
so because we don't have the proper facilities, the proper paint, you know, all of that requires dollars in itself, right? So it's just we barely have, like, even if I wanted to just get like a simple like little laminate made or something, you know, like I just wouldn't be able to have the best, right? So security printing is really tough, and so we rely on a lot, and that leads to a very 30 to 40% inflation rate. You know, again, it's all a guess. I'm just guessing as to what it is based off of what the black market is telling us. So you have the bank kind of led market, and then you have the black market or the gray market, and that's where I think the real market, where the real prices lie. So yeah, it's definitely a broken system.
Oh. Yeah, so I think it's hard. I mean, I'm already having trouble imagining what it's like there. But so if you are local people, what do they pay? And do they mostly pay in the birr or with US dollars as well, or euros or something else?
Yeah, dollars would be illegal to most Ethiopians. Not illegal to me, but to anyone without the like a passport. And euros, same effect. So they're forced to pay in birr. It's digital, although there's great inroads with you know, kind of digital payment processors and things like that. Addis Ababa is only, you know, 5-10% of the population, right? And so when you go into the rural areas, you're looking at cash only. Like cash is king, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so I guess the thing would be the best way to frame this. The people are only allowed to work with Ethiopian birr, you know, unless you have an exception or something like this.
Right. Okay. Clear.
Yeah, but I imagine most people don't have the exceptions that you have, right? So,
Yeah.
so when you think about, is this what kind of led you down the Bitcoin path, right? It just makes me wonder. You know, I think you said, when did you move out? When did you move back to Ethiopia? And I guess you're kind of now you're in Texas, but you lived in Ethiopia for a long time after you kind of moved back and forth, right? So maybe you could kind of explain how that process has been of moving back to Ethiopia? Is that what led you down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, or what kind of opened your eyes to understanding what Bitcoin is?
Yeah. So when I went to Ethiopia in 2013, I had no expectations of what I would find. I was just kind of going because it was 2013. We hadn't really, like, America hadn't really recovered from, you know, the recession, or at least I wasn't interested in any of the open jobs, right? So I was like,
Yeah.
let me go to Ethiopia, see what I can make of it. I got a job at Grant Thornton, advisory, audit, tax, you know, all of that good stuff. You know, we were working alongside, you know, Deloitte and EY and all of these like interesting advisors and all of their clients, right? So within 7 years, I was able to learn a lot about the Ethiopian economy and do a lot, you know, with people that, you know, are very interesting, right? I mean, yeah, and so that was 7 years of my life, and you know, in 2020, let's call it a civil tension, right? Kind of erupted. An assassination happened. You know, it was a very troubled time. I mean, on top of COVID, right? So you have what already happened, and then you had, you know, and it was the wet season. So this is June 2020, and so that's when I came back to the United States, and so yeah, when I came back June 2020, I think that was like one of the catalyzing moments. You know, there were several points where I learned about Bitcoin or was exposed to Bitcoin, but yeah, there are moments that really define your mindset, you know, and
when you get like the first aha moments, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, when you're
so that only happened after you came back to the United States. So while you were still in Ethiopia, you weren't like going down the rabbit hole hard, or
not at all.
Oh.
That moment happened when I had my backpack, and that was the only thing I had. Like I had baggage, but for some reasons I just wasn't able to bring the baggage, right? So and then I had to be on this flight because it was the 5th day where the internet was blocked out, right? So I had made a promise to myself. I said, hey, look, because they do this, they turn the internet off, right?
There's one telecommunications company in Ethiopia, right?
Well, there's a second competing one called Safaricom. They've now, right, in the past few months. But look, the switches belong to Telecom, right? Ethio Telecom. They're the master node, so they turned it off. And I was like, all right, it's only going to be for a few hours. Like, oh, it's only the rain. Like, oh, you know, the protest is going to go away. And then like things get more and more heated. On the 3rd day, it starts to cool off. But, you know, and then on the 5th day, I left. And so on, like, okay, maybe you can say my rabbit hole began the day I lost internet. Wow. And then I kind of like, I guess like you do learn stuff in the past, right? And then it kind of comes to you and you go, okay, this is what a ledger is good for, right? Or a distributed ledger is good for. And so, yeah, somewhere between packing, leaving, and then finally, you know, finding internet. And then when I found internet, I was just like, you know, digesting this information like there's no tomorrow, right? Yeah, that was my rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's interesting because, right, when you get blocked off from certain things that you need or that you're accustomed to, then you kind of start asking yourself the questions, right? Like, why can someone do this? Or what would be the incentives behind blocking me? If they're doing this with my internet, are they also doing this with my money? If they're doing it with my money, are they doing it with my health? Are they doing it with other things? Like, what else can they control if they will control it, right? And so I think those are a lot of questions that a lot of Bitcoiners ask themselves as they go down the rabbit hole. And then obviously the what is money question is so big. And I think it's so underrated when you want to understand Bitcoin. If you're going to ask yourself, what is Bitcoin? You have to first ask yourself, what is money? And you have to really take that from starting from zero, not starting from, you know, oh, it's the Ethiopian birr, or it's the US dollar, or it's the euro. Like really starting from, why do we transfer money back and forth? Why did we go from systems of barter to actual money. And as you start to answer those questions, then Bitcoin starts to illuminate itself. So when
I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Marcus.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna, you go ahead, Marcus. You're good.
I thought it was interesting because I mean, for me, I'll be honest, like what really got me into Bitcoin was in 2017. It was mostly number go up, right? But I guess in your situation, it was more from a look, they're shutting off the internet. They're basically shutting me off, and Bitcoin might be a way around this. Did I understand that correctly, or?
Yeah. I mean, because you got to imagine that moving countries is very expensive, right? Let me just put it that way. And moving from Ethiopia to the United States means you can't bring your wealth. Like I can't just send my wealth right over. Like it takes you have to be a little bit creative, So yeah, that definitely catalyzed me. And then also I would say, people like, CK at Bitcoin Magazine, I have great mentors. So I'm living in Austin, Texas right now. So I'm like surrounded by,
capital.
yeah, like the core contributors, let's say, right? So
yeah,
it's really easy for me to access information because like Marcus said, 2017, you guys went through all of the hell, right? So now it's a matter of like everybody else catching up in their own ways and learning for themselves. Okay, what's the difference between a Bitcoin and a shitcoin, right? Which is really what the conversation turns into really fast, and then that's where I start to lose friends.
Yeah. Well, I think just what Mark was saying, right? Like instead of the number go up, Alex Gladstein had popularized the term freedom go up. And I think that's like when you're looking at developing countries, that's a more important thing because at any moment, and this has happened, right, where you can use capital controls, where they can freeze your money, they can seize your money, or they can go, okay, this is what you have saved up. Well, we're going to change that exchange rate, and now it's worth half of what it was yesterday. And so I think all of those things are so important, and that's what none of the altcoins can ever solve for, right? Yeah. Because they all have centralized founders, or they have CEOs, or they have someone who created it that can turn it off or can manipulate the supply with the touch of a button, which makes it essentially like a fiat currency, like any government fiat currency.
Yeah, no, it's Alex. Alex was actually the first like story I did, like now I'm all public and there's like 10 podcasts I've been on and all of this, but Alex was definitely the first, person to publish this, and it's freedom go up is, a reason that I think billions will be onboarded.
Yeah. So I guess going back, right? So when you look at, you were saying that Bitcoin, or that most Ethiopian citizens can only use the Ethiopian birr legally. How is it, you got a telecommunication system that basically has monopoly in Ethiopia. And then you have the law says that you can only use the Ethiopian birr. Has that been a hurdle or something that's been hard to overcome with trying to get Bitcoin into the hands of people?
Yes and no, because it's a hurdle because obviously it's everything is not available to you, right? The courts, the laws, I can't do things as openly as I want to, right? And so, but at the same time, this actually creates a great deal of demand from the audience, right? From population, because you have to imagine the government takes up a great deal of the economy. They employ a lot of people. So if you just pick 10 people at random, like 6 or 7 are going to end up working for either an NGO, an NGO, or like some charity or minister kind of funded exercise, right? Government or public sector, right? And so the private sector is still generally a new thing for Ethiopians. because before our communist era, which completely eliminated our private sector, you had merchants and kind of a merchant class in our monarch era, right? So again, not too far ago, like he was coronated in the 30s, and then the communists killed him in 74. So the idea is we don't have a merchant class or a private sector to begin with. So a lot of these conversations are, I mean, look, Bitcoin might not even be the most important thing we talk about, right? Like just understanding what a free market is and understanding what insurance and risk mitigation, like, it's funny, like you don't know if you're talking to a farmer, you don't know if you're talking to, graphic designer or an engineer, but it has to click in some way. So yeah, Bitcoin is interesting because of all of the different ways that it kind of relates to the people there. But yeah, it's definitely not from the American attitude is, it's like this asset class, right? Or this investment vehicle, or this number go up, and it really, really is a freedom go up for us,
Yeah, I think that's really important. So I guess that's like, is that still how the law is? Bitcoin's illegal, or any other currency besides? Has there been any type of changes? Or, I listened to a guy like Beauty On, for example, who's Nigerian, and he's adamant that Bitcoin is not money, that Bitcoin is a database, right? That, anything can be used as money. So like cigarettes, bananas, whatever can be used as money, but Bitcoin is a database. And if you can get the law to agree that Bitcoin's a database, then it can be used as money. But I think that's, so has there been any breakthroughs or anything that's in motion at all in Ethiopia with trying to make it easier to get Bitcoin in the hands of the citizens of Ethiopia?
Yeah, so if you ask, like 7 ministers, you're going to get 7 answers.
Yeah.
And so what I love, and it's very decentralized, and some will be more accepting, some will be less. What I've learned is, so one of the distinctions that was made is Bitcoin as a money, just like you said, is, or lowercase b, is frowned upon, and then capital B, in terms of like the technology, right? And the open source nature of supporting the code base and all of this, that is allowed, right? Because that's actually revenue generating, right? Because you have engineers, they're out there doing what they need to do, supporting the Bitcoin network, they're getting paid. So it's a net positive for Ethiopia. So they understand the conversation that they need to straddle. And so they all like play their part, right? And I think it's moving towards decentralized technologies. I don't think they can say that all at once yet, right? Like it's going to be a very slow and genuine process of like that learning. Now, the National Bank of Ethiopia made an announcement, right? And then all of the engineers and programmers made a fuss. And then the very next day, they kind of apologized, right? And so they're like, no, we didn't mean to ban Bitcoin. We just meant, right? So like they have all of these things where they, it's politics, right? They move the conversation forward 3 steps and then move back 5 steps and then 10 to the left. Like, it doesn't make any sense, but that's how they go about it. I've tried documenting it, but then that just kind of drove me crazy. What I've noticed is there's been more events. So whether they're talking good or bad, or, sometimes they use the word blockchain. Obviously they had a relationship with Cardano. Yeah. There have been more events within the past month than in the past 3 years, right? So as long as that keeps happening, I think we're in a good spot. Yeah,
it almost reminds me of Nigeria a few years ago, or a year ago or so, when they got on stage and go, Bitcoin's ruining our national currency. We can't stop it, and all these things, and I think that's where a lot of countries are going to get to, is they're just going to realize, like, okay, either we recognize that our national currency is going to lose to Bitcoin. Even in the United States, we have to recognize that. And so we either got to get on or we get left behind. And I think that's what, a country like El Salvador is understanding. And, and the thing with El Salvador is not only do they benefit from buying Bitcoin and from all the things on the periphery, the outside of Bitcoin, but then they also benefit from tourism. I mean, who would have thought 3 years ago that people would have wanted to be going down to El Salvador? And now it's like one of the most coveted places to go to for tourism because of their Bitcoin only stance.
Yeah.
And so it makes me think, if there's a country like Ethiopia, I mean, think about how much bigger Ethiopia is and the things that it can offer and how young the population is, right? If a country like Ethiopia adopts Bitcoin, imagine what it'll do for the tourism, for the jobs, for people wanting to move back to Ethiopia that are Ethiopian. Like the things that could change are just I can't even think of all the things that could happen with accepting Bitcoin in Ethiopia.
I think it comes back to like the diaspora and the populations, right? I wouldn't even say diaspora, like populations and how they work. I'm reading a book called Disunited Nations by Peter Zahan, right?
Oh yeah.
It's a recent book, and then I think he has he's very interesting, right?
He does geopolitics, right?
Exactly. And what I learned from that is populations, just how important they are, especially the age of the populations,
yes.
Right? Because that's what makes or breaks your work ethic and all of this, right? And your, social security effects and all the things that states were providing you no longer, right? And what that means for the institutions involved and all of the treaties involved, I think is really, really interesting. And I think El Salvador kind of broke the mold and is doing something that is really fresh, because it seems like all of these countries are on the same trajectory. And I feel like that's the definition of crazy, right? Doing what you've already been doing and expect, like, oh, the UN, we've only been doing it for 7 years.
Yeah.
Like, oh, the World Bank. Yeah, it was a great idea. Like
taking loans from the IMF, right?
Like, can we still say that, right? Like, I don't think we can. So I hope to just like be a cultural break in that, like just, put a little ice pick in the ice of block, but it doesn't work on any level. And so, yeah, El Salvador was the first to take a crack at it. Central African Republic, at least at the nation state level. And you hope that continues towards a kind of a genuine open source Bitcoin only model, because, that really is where value is, right? I mean, you need that proof of work. You need that energy to go into the system to maintain that. Or what do you have? You have, POS, right? So yeah, El Salvador is they have some balls on them.
Yeah, I really like how you mentioned that if you ask 7 different ministers, you get 7 different answers, because I'm here on St. Martin, and I don't know if you've heard the news, but there was a member of parliament here who said he'd want to get his salary in some altcoin. Yeah, I'll be nice today. And then I heard the Minister of Finance, he's also talking about blockchain this and decentralized autonomous organizations. So it seems to me that they're just still going through their, like crypto and then hopefully Bitcoin rabbit hole, because it seems to be a journey for a lot of people, right? If you're curious enough, then you have to explore the altcoins as well. Yeah. Hopefully they'll find but in the end, it's not one monolithic thing that we're talking about. It's all people with different opinions and different stages of education. And to be honest, my hopes in government is I'm a little bit cynical looking at that. I'm really just more hoping that some kind of, how I'm constantly thinking here, what can I do to just like educate or inform the population? I'm really curious, like, how do you see that for Ethiopia? You're leading certain education programs. How do you approach that, or what is your view on it?
I try not to take myself seriously at all, because and I think that's a great way to do the education, because, well, that's how I've done it so far, and it's yielded pretty good results. Like the context to which we're speaking about money in Ethiopia is, so it's a little shameful to talk about money in Ethiopia, right? It's like a little dirty, because it's such a big topic, right? And biblically, it's already been addressed, right? Like the ethics of money are already profoundly like written in the Bible, right? That there need to be principles and ethics involved, so you don't manipulate, right, what's going on. And that's why, there was a lot of like church lineage in those systems. And even then, obviously, you have people, right, men, simple men leading churches, so that could go awry. So, the Austrian model, like even in the olden days, was not working. But now we have a system where the ledger is decentralized. So in Ethiopia, it's very shameful to talk about money, and so I come in as probably like the diaspora, right, or the one that probably doesn't know the exact social cues, right? And so I try to really move the culture, because I'm definitely not the smartest Bitcoin advocate or educator, and I don't, there's a lot of technical, node operators and all of this, like actual builders. So for me, I look at it as, all right, what can I do in my, studio, right? And that's, in my native tongue, say these things that, aren't supposed to be said, right? And talking about money is squarely right in the middle of it, and people keep telling me to stop, and it's like, all right, well, I've done it for 2 years already. I can't not do it anymore. I'm going to keep talking about money, But I think
are you really getting those kind of reactions? Yeah.
What was that?
I said, are you really getting those kind of reactions? Are people asking you to like stop or?
No, I mean, now it's not, but that first year when I published the Cardano thing, that was like the year, no, 2021, April. Yeah. Shitcoin millionaire. Because even the name is so provocative, right? Shitcoin millionaire. So I broke a few toes, I'm sure, but hopefully they forgive me.
So just for the people that don't know, that was when you went after Cardano, saying,
yeah.
Well, maybe you can summarize it for the listener.
Yeah, I know. I told everyone they're a shitcoin. There's nothing more to it.
So I'll try to summarize it. So Cardano came to Ethiopia, right? And they said, we're going to work with the government and we're going to put like different things on a blockchain, whether it's like agricultural stuff and basically what yeah, again, maybe you can say it better, but what I understood of it is more of a marketing ploy where they can say, look, we're working with this government here out in Ethiopia. This is real world adoption. And they use it as a big PR to, from their standpoint, while actually on the ground, they're not doing anything or not building anything. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. And it's really upsetting because for so long, I believed them, right? So it's like, I know that they employ some great people. Like, in Ethiopia, I'm sure still even have employees. So the story is that, but, and it's happening. You guys, in your show, you talked about, examples, and I think it was in Georgia and some other smaller nations, right? I mean, they seem to prey on a certain type of country that like maybe doesn't have the existing infrastructure, or maybe communication might be an issue. So yeah,
they're looking for a use case, right? I think that's the biggest thing. They already have people bought in to their bags of Cardano or whatever altcoin it is, but now they want to tag themselves or peg themselves to some use case, so then they can brag about it. And then other people will buy into their Ponzi scheme. So it is saddening when you see things like that. But I think for people like us, right? And I look at someone like you, Cal, like once you get to see through all the BS and the lies, then it almost feels like a duty, like, okay, I walked down that line, and there's gonna be thousands and millions of people that walk down the same line of trying to understand what money is, that want to know what crypto is and want to know what Bitcoin is, and they have no clue where to start. So I want to give them that head start that I didn't have, right? Like I want to give them that push so that they're not starting out on some random shitcoin, but that they actually get to start out with the real thing of substance, because some people get turned off from Bitcoin because of some random altcoin that they got duped by.
Yep. And that's the mission, to make fun of like this entire thing and call it out, because like it took me a lot of time and energy to like go down the Cardano thing, right? Go down the Ethereum thing. I did that too, right? And then get to Bitcoin, right? So it even when I got here and people are sending me messages, this is between 2021 and like right when I got here was June 2020. By the time I published Shitcoin Millionaire, like you can actually like even see the things that I've published and like kind of like count backwards. Like, okay, how much of an idiot was he in 2020 compared to 2021 compared to 2022? Like, and so it's like, all right, I'm now just like logging every little thing on because I realized like, okay, I went down these rabbit holes, I learned something genuine, and I'm still like going down a rabbit hole, right? Because I'm still learning, right? And I'm probably like digesting so many books compared to, you know, me before I was a Bitcoiner, right? And so I still want to keep building like a thesis as to how things work, you know? Like I definitely don't want to be someone that just talks about Bitcoin as well, because I want to still have my presentations include real world examples. So I need to talk. And right now I'm only limited to 2 countries. And so I'm hoping, you know, more will fall into the mix. But yeah, hopefully like what I've learned in my rabbit hole, I can share with others, and that's going to save them a great deal of like time and money, you know?
Yes. So, you know, kind of switching gears, I'm a big competitor, right? And it just makes me think like, you got Nigeria in Africa, in West Africa, right? Then you got Ethiopia in East Africa. And so it's like the 2 biggest countries in Africa. Nigeria is making a lot of steps and a lot of movements towards Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Do you think that Ethiopia sees what Nigeria is doing and is like, hey, if we don't step it up with Bitcoin, we're gonna get left in the dust, we're gonna get left behind? And I mean, and thinking about Ethiopia, like there's a lot of hydropower for mining, and you know, the ways that like mining could blow up in a good way in Ethiopia. And I wonder if that's ever, you know, in the back of Ethiopians' minds, or if I'm just making up this quote unquote rivalry, right, of the top 2 African countries.
No, it's good to have that kind of competitive spirit. And I would, you know, I've definitely brought it up in my lectures to where like, I'm like, you know, Africa, like Nigeria is kicking our ass, you know, in terms of adoption, Nigeria's numbers are crazy. Like they don't get enough attention. Now, Abu Bakr Noor Khalil, he's a part of the B Trust board. He's a core you know, contributor. And he's like 19 years old or something, you know, like he's like the coolest kid. And and then you have all of the, you know, maintainers and supporters around that, and the people building, you know, on layer 2s and all of this. So, you know, as long as the education remains pure, you know, I like that, because you get through the conversation faster, you know, like it's also strategic for me. Like, I mean, why would I talk about all of these other, you know, what ifs when I know exactly how this works, you know? And that's, you know, this week, the entire Ethereum crew, you know, they're at odds, right?
Yes.
Purely because what they thought was going to happen is not going to happen, right? Which is a part of life, you know?
Are you talking about the merge or?
The POS, the POW, it's I'm following the Twitter threads, and it just sounds so funny to me, you know, that they're surprised that this happened, you know, so
yeah, exactly. I think, you know, as we all know, right, all of these are trying to say that they're Bitcoin in some better way, and they're not. And I think it's just important to understand, right, when you really focus in on one thing, instead of trying to like the whole point of focusing on one thing and making one thing really good, which that is what Bitcoin is you're going to really succeed. And when you spread yourself thin on a million different altcoins, a million different things, you don't really understand anything about any of them. All you do is you're just looking at the charts and looking at the price. And when we're talking about being self-sovereign, being truly free as a man or as a woman, and with your family or with your community or with your country, that's what Bitcoin can provide. Is it can provide that true freedom and sovereignty to hold your wealth, and no one can take it from you, and you can spend it however you please. And whether the price is going up or down, Bitcoin doesn't make any promises like all these altcoins do. All Bitcoin promises is that every 10 minutes, another block will drop and you'll be able to transfer your money however you want to. So I think that's something that's so big, that's very overlooked, especially in like the Western man's mind of, well, we've never needed that. Well, we've also never lived through hyperinflation in the United States. So we don't know what it's like to live in high inflation or hyperinflation. And we don't know that when we start getting to those points, maybe our governments will act in a similar way that, with these capital controls, freezing bank accounts, doing bail-ins, and all sorts of things that we've just never experienced before. And so I think that's just important to have that freedom to hold your money, and that no one can take it away from you. It's just amazing how, you can totally see the use case in every country in the world. And then there's just a lot of people that don't pay attention to it.
Yeah. No, we'll all pay attention.
Yeah.
Do you consider yourself a Bitcoin maximalist, Kyle? And like, how do you navigate like the whole Bitcoin social space? I mean, you're in Texas, you're on Twitter, anywhere else, or how do you approach that?
I mean, I just, it's all just comedy to me. I just try to, make light of the situation.
Yeah.
I am a maximalist for sure. I mean, what else would I call myself? At this point, that's the only thing I own. That's the only thing I care about. I've actively sold things to buy that, right? So, yeah. I mean, but also I believe in, I believe in other things. Like you should build, enterprise and businesses, and I believe in aid. Like give. If you have a community, like you guys talked about, you need to give towards that. And see a bigger picture. But yeah, I'm a maximalist through and through. Everything else in this space, I think, is just comedy for me. I know it's not funny for a lot of people because they're actually they have a lot more skin in the game, let's say. And so I just normally wish everyone best of luck. And even people that meet me in person, they kind of just see that, I'm a bit of a goofball, and, I focus on education. People don't believe me when I say I actually respond to hundreds of DM threads. Because these are people that reached out to me at my lowest, right? And you have to imagine from 2014 to 2020, I was doing other stuff in Ethiopia, not related to Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
I was doing I was in the event space, I was doing advisory, all these things, right? So, yeah, there were just a lot of people that I think I could say learned with me. And so, Ethiopians, right? And of course, everyone else, all of the other ninjas that this is Telegram numbers, right? And DMs on Instagram and Telegram and Twitter and what are the other ones? There's so many ones that just kind of keep sending me notifications, and I genuinely try to respond because that is a facet of education, right? Somebody should be able to ask me a question on a DM, and I'll immediately respond. And so, yeah, I'm mostly occupied with PDFs and DMs. But yeah, the conversation in this, let's say, city is also interesting, but I'm a bit removed from that. So for me, I get to look at it as a newcomer, or as a rookie,
Do you ever get
Awesome.
overwhelmed with the task at hand, the marathon
Yeah, yeah.
Overwhelm you with the marathon that Ethiopia has?
Like on days like this, or like on weeks like this, where I've been traveling and all of this, yeah, it will. But also when you look at the result of like, if I'm looking at what I'm doing on a daily basis, it might seem very menial, right? I'm literally just having a conversation, and even with my task at like Hoseki, I'm talking to mortgage lenders about how they close their books, right? Like, oh, how long did it take to process your mortgage today, right?
Mm.
And so I'm kind of building a reservoir of research on the fiat world, or on the let's say legacy world of how we traditionally do business, right? Mortgage lending, any business really that needs a proof of fund, right? Or some type of collateral is involved. This process will be necessary. And my job is not to force anything. It's to simply observe the world and see if at any point as Bitcoin adoption rises, our product could fit somewhere, right? And right. So yeah, I do that research most of my day. I'm making calls, I'm having conversations with Ethiopians, expats all around the world. I'm obviously never the best source for information. So what I try to do is like cite and source. Like if I say something that I think is, like a paramount word or phrase, I'll try to cite that and source that. Yeah. Just because like I know like 300 Ethiopian kids are going to see this at some point. Like at some point throughout 10 years, you're going to have kids watch this, and so it's like, what do I want to project to them? And so yeah, and I think telling, like I'd love to learn about your stories as well, like like what things do we want to say to Ethiopian kids, because those are going to be the audience that I think most is kind of attracted to my content.
All right, well, how about this? Say that there's that 300 Ethiopian kids or 300 Ethiopian citizens, or what would you want to say to them right now?
I'd tell them that's very tough, because I'm speaking to a population that has a smartphone or access to YouTube, right? Yeah. Or access to Twitter. And so I'm only going to be reaching 20 to 30% of the population, right? Wow. And so 70 are just not going to hear my message. So actually, I would tell the 20 that are privileged enough to hear my voice to find a way to get the 70 to also hear my voice, right? Yeah. It's not that it matters what the hell I'm saying, right? It's the fact that there are people that can't hear me, right? Because they don't have freedom to connect, or they don't have that ability to connect to the telecom, right? Or USSD or whoever's managing your communication.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thanks, Cal. This was awesome. We want to respect your time and let you loose. If there's anything else or any question, did you have any questions for us, or if you wanted anything for people to know about you or your business, or how they can reach out to you, feel free to ask us, or to let people know how they can reach you as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, the first thing I'm going to do when I get this clip is I'm going to send it to 600 kids in Ethiopia, right? Who knows if they're kids? They're all ninjas, right? I don't keep names, but I want them to know that they can break any model. They can break any kind of mindset that they have, and they could really change the world. And Bitcoin is just the tip of the iceberg. Like, yeah, you take custody of it. You try not to tell anybody about it, right? Like that's really the only rule to the game. Everything else you also have to learn, right? You have to learn about multiples. You have to learn about how to run not even a business, a basic will, a basic trust, right? For your family. You have to think about investments for the generation after you, right? How much money do you give them? How much money you do not give them? Because, too much could spoil the bunch. So I just hope, people that hear this continue learning and make this a larger effort. Because there are a lot that aren't privileged to, have access to a YouTube account and listen to Big Sean and Marcus.
Perfectly said. And if I could just jump in there as well, Kyle, because what I really love, and I know this is somewhat of a cliche for developing countries, also for here on St. Martin, but you know, like the whole internet revolution and the mobile wave and everything, you know, like where Europe had to go through landlines and then to mobile, and then, you know, the new generation just gets their mobile, it's a supercomputer in your hand, you have the same access to the internet and the world's information as the rest of the world. And now with Bitcoin, this is like the newest frontier again. And even the Western world is still struggling to understand this thing. So if you guys are actually listening to this and starting to learn this, you got a massive, massive opportunity in your hands. So keep going and yeah, kick some ass out there.
Yep. Again, thanks again, Cal. We wish the best for you, man. If there's anything that we can do from the Meme Factory or from Marcus and me, let us know. We'd love to talk again in the future. We're rooting for Ethiopia, just like Marcus said. We want the world to get the best experience, and we think that Bitcoin can help make that change with how bad things are in every central government. Mm-hmm. So thanks again. Again, for Bitcoiners Guide, episode 26 from Plan Marcus, Big Sean and Cal, we're over and out. Peace.